My name is Olivia Barnes, and I'm 29 years old. I've always been the kind of person who craves independence and privacy, which is why I love my job as a digital marketing consultant. I travel a lot for work, which comes with its share of stress, but it also offers flexibility. When I'm home, I cherish the quiet moments I can spend in my apartment, a space that's completely mine. There's something about coming home to my own space after a long week, having a cup of tea, and sinking into a good book that helps me recharge. It's the simple pleasures that make all the difference. But lately, I've realized that the life I've built, one of client calls, tight deadlines, and constant movement, isn't as peaceful as I imagined. Every time I come back to my apartment, I find it's exactly the escape I need from the chaos of the outside world. I take pride in the way it reflects who I am: organized, calm, and in control. That's why when I returned last Friday, after a grueling 3-week business trip to Chicago, I was eager to dive into the comforts of my sanctuary. Meetings, red-eye flights, and airport food had drained me, and I couldn't wait to unwind. All I wanted was to shower, grab some takeout, and not talk to anyone for the next 48 hours. But when I opened the door to my apartment, I was met with an unexpected surprise. David, my neighbor, standing outside, looking like he had something important to say. That was the start of everything changing. I smiled and waved at David, but there was something off about his expression. He didn't return my smile right away. Instead, he shifted on his feet, almost as if he was unsure about how to start the conversation. "Hey, Olivia," he said, his voice hesitant. "Everything okay at your place?" I blinked, taken aback by the question. "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. David rubbed the back of his neck, eyes flicking toward my apartment. "Well, we've been hearing some strange noises. Screaming, actually. My wife thought something was wrong, so we almost called the cops." "Screaming?" I laughed, though it felt a little forced. "Screaming?" I repeated, not sure if I'd heard him right. "That's impossible. I've been gone for 3 weeks." David's face stayed serious, which made my stomach tighten. "Screaming. A couple of nights ago, and before that too, it was loud. My wife even thought someone was hurt." I felt a cold knot form in my chest. "That can't be right," I said quickly, trying to brush it off. "I've had a key made for my sister to water my plants. She's the only one who has access to the apartment." David didn't look convinced. "All right, just thought I'd mention it," he said, stepping back toward his door. "Let me know if you need anything, Olivia." I nodded, but I wasn't sure what to make of the conversation. I locked the door behind me as I entered the apartment, still trying to process his words. But as soon as I stepped inside, I felt an eerie discomfort. The place seemed too perfect, too neat, like someone had been here making sure everything was just right. And then I saw it. The bed. It was made. And I hadn't made it. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the bed. The corners were tucked so tightly, the pillows fluffed exactly as if they were placed by someone who knew what they were doing. It looked like a hotel bed, nothing like the way I left it. I never made my bed. It was one of those small habits I let go of, thinking I'd get to it later, but later never came. This, though, this was different. Someone had been here. Someone had made my bed. I walked around the apartment, feeling more and more uneasy with every step. The kitchen counter was wiped down, everything in its place. The living room looked spotless, almost staged like a magazine spread. My coffee table, where I usually left my notes and reminders, was cleared off. It felt as though my personal touch had been erased, replaced by a pristine version of my space that wasn't mine. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I pulled out my phone and dialed Maya's number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice casual, almost too casual. "Hey, Liv, how was your trip?" "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "Quick question, were you at my place?" "Oh yeah, I stopped by to water the plants. Just tidied up a little while you were gone." I froze. "Did you make my bed?" There was a slight hesitation. Yeah, I thought it needed it. You were gone for so long and it just didn't look right." I exhaled sharply, trying to hold my frustration in check. "You didn't bring anyone over, did you?" "No. Of course not, Liv. I just went in, watered the plants, and left." But it didn't feel right. The bed, the immaculate apartment, it all felt like something was off. I sat on the edge of the perfectly made bed, staring at the too-clean floor. The apartment felt wrong, like it wasn't mine anymore. My mind kept going back to Maya's words. how she claimed she'd been alone, just watering the plants. But I knew something was off. No one, not even Maya, would rearrange my life without telling me. And yet, here I was, staring at a space that had been altered, like someone had come in and decided to tidy up my chaos. I stood up and walked to the window, trying to shake the feeling that my privacy had been violated. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the quiet street. Nothing seemed out of place out there, but everything felt different in here. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. I just needed to make sense of it all. Then my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a text from David, the neighbor. "Hey, Olivia. Just wanted to make sure everything's okay. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." I frowned. Why was he checking in again? The conversation earlier had unsettled me, but this message felt like something more, like he knew more than he was letting on. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just him being neighborly. But it didn't sit right with me. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was happening while I wasn't home. What was going on here? Why were people coming and going, making noise in my apartment? It was time to figure it out. I couldn't let it go. I needed to know the truth. So I made a decision. I was going to install cameras. I couldn't just keep guessing. The decision to install cameras felt like a betrayal to myself. I had always prided myself on trusting my family, my home, and my own sense of security. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no choice. I couldn't let this slide. I needed answers. I couldn't live in this strange, uncomfortable limbo, wondering what was happening in my own space. The cameras weren't anything flashy, small, discreet, cloud-connected, and audio-enabled. I placed them strategically, one in the living room, one in the hallway, one in the kitchen, and two in the bedroom. I set them up in spots where they were barely noticeable, hidden behind bookshelves, above cabinets, tucked behind houseplants. They were small enough that even if someone did happen to notice them, they'd just blend into the background. Before I left for my next work trip, I sent Maya a simple text. "Hey, I'm leaving for San Francisco tomorrow. I'll be away for a few days. If you want to water the plants, feel free, but please don't do anything else while I'm gone. No cleaning, no reorganizing, just the plants." Her response was typical. "Sure, Liv. You know how I am. Safe travels." It was the kind of message that seemed innocent enough from anyone else, but coming from her, it felt like a warning, like a trap. I didn't trust her, and I wasn't sure if I ever would again. Once I landed in San Francisco, I checked the cameras. At first, everything was still. No one was in the apartment. I exhaled thinking maybe I was just overreacting. But then, around 9 p.m., the front door opened. Someone stepped inside, someone I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. It had begun. I sat frozen, staring at the feed as the man stepped into my apartment. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. He wasn't carrying anything, no suitcase or bag, just a casual, confident stride like he knew exactly where he was going. I held my breath as he walked through the living room, glancing around as if he was settling in for the night. I watched, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. A few moments later, the door opened again, and another person walked in. A woman with a bag of wine in her hand. She smiled, handing the man the bottle like they'd done this before. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They exchanged a few words in hushed tones, but I couldn't make out what they were saying over the static of the feed. The woman settled into the couch, setting the wine down. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit there in a daze, paralyzed by the sight of strangers in my space. Then, just as I was about to close the feed, a third person entered. Another man, this one with a folding chair slung over his shoulder, and he immediately started setting up in the living room, acting like this was an ordinary evening for him. I was shaking, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I wanted to call the police, but what would I even say? I hadn't been home. These people were strangers, but it was my apartment, my private space, and the worst part was I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't just keep watching. I had a client call to attend to. I closed the feed, grabbed my laptop, and joined the Zoom meeting, but I could hardly focus. All I could think about was the people in my apartment. The Zoom meeting felt like it lasted a lifetime. My mind was miles away, consumed by what I had just witnessed in my apartment. As the meeting droned on, I barely registered the slides about ad analytics or the marketing strategies being discussed. I couldn't stop replaying the footage in my head, the strangers walking in, the casual way they settled in as if they owned the place. I wanted to scream, but I had to stay calm. I had a job to do, and this presentation wasn't going to end itself. But every minute felt like an eternity, and I found myself nodding along, pretending to care about something that now seemed so insignificant compared to what was happening back home. When the meeting finally ended, I immediately pulled up the camera feed again, praying that maybe I had imagined the worst of it. The apartment was still, too still, like nothing had happened at all. Then I saw it, the living room. It was filled with people now. They were lounging on my couch, laughing, talking in low voices. Someone was playing music, soft, rhythmic beats that didn't belong in my space. I froze, my eyes fixed on the screen. One of the men was sitting in his boxer shorts, sprawled across my sofa like he had every right to be there. A woman, barefoot, walked through the room holding a small black case. I wanted to throw my laptop across the room, but instead, I just sat there, frozen in disbelief. How had it come to this? My home, my sanctuary, was being turned into a space for strangers to gather, to do things that weren't mine to witness. I felt sick. How long had this been happening? What had my family done to my life? I closed the laptop abruptly, the weight of it all sinking in. This wasn't just an invasion anymore. It was betrayal. I sat there, staring at the closed laptop, trying to collect myself. But it was impossible. I couldn't shake the images from my mind. The strangers in my apartment, the casual way they occupied my space like it was nothing. I had always prided myself on keeping things under control, on managing my life with a sense of order. Now that order was shattered, replaced by a chaos I couldn't comprehend. I didn't even know where to start, how to process everything I had just seen. I picked up my phone, hoping to distract myself for a moment, but the screen lit up with an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated, but curiosity won out, and I answered. Olivia Barnes? The voice was calm, professional, but it did nothing to ease the knot in my stomach. Yes, I said, my voice tight. This is Officer Richards from the San Francisco Police Department. We've received several complaints regarding a gathering at your residence tonight. Are you aware of anyone currently using your apartment? My blood ran cold. No, I'm not home. I'm in San Francisco. We've had reports of inappropriate behavior at your residence, and some guests are claiming they weren't aware they were being recorded. Your parents are there, and they're claiming they had your permission to host the gathering. My entire body went stiff. What? No, I never gave them permission for anything. I just told them to water the plants. That's it. The officer asked if I had any proof, and I quickly sent the message I had sent to my mother, the one where I explicitly told her not to do anything other than water the plants. The officer acknowledged the message and said they would follow up with me. I hung up, my hands trembling. It was one thing to be violated by strangers, but this was a betrayal I never expected from my own family. The call with the officer left me feeling numb, like I had just stepped out of my body and was watching everything unfold from a distance. My family, the people I thought I could trust above all, had completely disregarded my boundaries. I couldn't even process it. How had this happened? Why didn't I see it coming? How long had they been doing this behind my back? The idea that my parents had used my apartment without my knowledge or consent was a gut punch I wasn't prepared for. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my mother. I hesitated before opening it, already bracing myself for the excuse I knew was coming. Olivia, we thought you'd be okay with it. It was just a small get-together. We didn't think it would be a problem. We didn't want to worry you. It was for people who needed support. My stomach churned as I read the message. I couldn't believe the audacity. They thought I'd be okay with it? She had completely crossed a line, and yet she acted as though this was something normal, something I should have just accepted. I had given them a key for one purpose, to water my plants, nothing more. And now they were hosting gatherings, bringing strangers into my private space, using it for whatever they saw fit. My sanctuary had become a place for them to impose their version of help. I didn't reply to the message. I couldn't. What was there to say? They didn't just violate my privacy. They violated the trust I had in them. They didn't see my space as mine. It was just another thing for them to control. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't stay in a place that had been tainted by their betrayal. It was time to make a change. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind: the footage, the officer's call, the message from my mom. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw strangers lounging in my living room, treating my space like it was theirs. My home had always been my escape, my safe haven, and now it felt like a place I no longer recognized. It was tainted, violated. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't return calls, and I certainly didn't talk to my parents. I had nothing to say to them, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no way to fix this. My trust in them was shattered. They'd crossed a line, and I couldn't just brush it off. No amount of apologies could undo what they'd done. After a couple of sleepless nights, I made a decision. I was going to sell the apartment. I couldn't stay here, not with everything that had happened. I called a real estate agent and started the process, packing up my things and pretending I wasn't completely unraveling inside. When my parents called again, I ignored their messages. I couldn't face them. What would I even say? You ruined my home? You violated my trust? The words wouldn't do it justice. It wasn't just the fact that they used my apartment without permission. It was the fact that they thought it was okay, that they didn't even see the problem with it. They hadn't even bothered to ask. They'd assumed I would be fine with their actions. I sold the apartment quietly, not posting any details, not telling anyone what had happened. The place was gone, just like the version of my family I used to know. I moved into a smaller, quieter place, far away from everything. It was mine, and only mine. Finally, I had peace. In life, it's crucial to establish and maintain strong boundaries, especially with family and those you trust most. Boundaries aren't just about physical space. They're about protecting your emotional well-being, your personal space, and your peace of mind. Trust is something that, once broken, can be incredibly difficult to rebuild, and it's essential to recognize when those boundaries are being crossed, even by the people closest to you. Don't be afraid to speak up when something doesn't feel right, or when your space is being invaded, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. People may not always understand or respect your boundaries, but that doesn't mean you should let it slide. Protecting your peace and your independence is not selfish. It's necessary for your growth and happiness. Sometimes the hardest decisions in life are the ones that require you to distance yourself from toxic situations or people. Trust your instincts, even when they make you uncomfortable. And when you find yourself questioning whether your feelings or needs are valid, remember that your well-being should always come first. In the end, you are the only one who truly understands what you need to feel safe and content in your own life.